Hey guys, this is Echo Soundworks with ADSR. You're checking out a first look video where we are going to be demoing and testing out the newest addition to the Native Instruments effect suite, and that is the Crush Pack. So the Crush Pack is a collection of 3 distortion style plugins. Now, just calling it distortion style plugins is kind of doing it a disservice because there's a lot more flavor in these 3 plugins than just distortion and saturation. So it costs $69.99 or $49.99 if you have an upgrade path. Now, the 3 plugins are Byte, which is a sample rate reducer and a bit crusher, and Dirt is the second one, and that is your actual kind of more conventional distortion plugin. Now, the final one here on the far right, the blue one, is called Freak. All right, so let's walk through each of these real quick. So first up is the Byte plugin. This is the bit crusher and the sample reducer. So the sample reduction, your sample rate's on the left. You have a mix knob in the middle to control the entirety of the effect, and you have your bit crusher to the right. Now this is a pretty musical sounding bit crusher and sample reducer. It's easy to get a sound that doesn't sound super bit crushed, which is nice because some bit crushing plugins just bit crush so hard that you can't really do anything except bit crush. Now, there's a couple interesting features. I'm not going to go through every knob or feature in this because I think it's beyond the scope of just the first look idea, but I'm going to touch on some of the interesting ideas that I thought were kind of unique to Byte. First off is the jitter. The jitter will add a little bit of like fluctuation and movement to the sound, which kind of helps it come alive. I really like that you have the pre and post filter, but you'll find that in other bit crushing plugins. Also, I really like the saturation knob. The saturation knob is going to saturate the sound after you apply the sample reduction or the bit crushing. So it can kind of warm up what's otherwise a really computerized, digital, cold sounding effect. Finally, you have this cool feature, the expand. It adds a bit of stereo widening or stereo width to the mixed signal. So I have a mix here of this little beat I worked up for this demo or for this video. Let's check it out on this key patch. So I'm going to turn it off. This is what it sounds like on its own. Right? And let's turn it on. Right, so it doesn't sound super bit crushed, but it's a pretty cool effect, right? And I have this in with the whole little beat here. We'll play it so you kind of hear it in context. Right, so it's not what you would expect from a bit crusher. So what I'm going to do now is we've loaded up a basic sine wave in Serum. And let's turn on the Byte plugin. And I'm going to go through some of the presets so you can hear it and how it affects a basic sound, just like a sine wave. So next up is Dirt. This is the distortion and saturation plugin. Now, if you're looking for a distortion plugin that is multi-band, that gives you just the utmost control over each frequency and everything involved, this isn't the plugin. This is more of a quick fix. You can jump in, apply some very musical, kind of production-ready distortion or saturation, and move on. So it's not like a FabFilter Saturn or an Isotope Trash, but it's not meant to either. So it's kind of cool because it's split into an A and a B layer, essentially. You have the left side of it over here, which has the drive control, and then you have your dry, saturation, and fold, and you have the same thing on the right? And you have bass, tilt, and mix. So you can have a saturation and then like fold on one side and layer that together to get a unique, cool sound. So I have applied dirt, freak, and bite to this guitar sound in this beat. It doesn't even sound like an electric guitar anymore. But let's play this real quick, and then I'm going to turn off freak and bite, and we're going to mess around with just dirt. All right, so let's turn off freak and bite, and let's solo this guitar. All right, so dirt is pretty subtle right now, but let's get in there and make it a little bit crazier. So let's turn up the drive on the first circuit. Now there's these little exclamation points above the drive. With the exclamation point on, the drive gets a lot crazier. Hear the difference. We'll go all the way to A for this. So it's pretty easy to dirty up a sound. It sounds very musical. It's actually kind of hard to get a too harsh or too overdriven signal with dirt, which is nice. Again, you don't have as much control as say like FabFilter Saturn or Isotope Trash, but it's kind of your trade-off is, yeah, you may not be able to go under the hood and tinker with your sound as much, but it's also hard to get an unusable sound. All right, let's move on to the next one, which is Freak. So in my opinion, Freak is the most interesting of these three plugins. It combines different types of amplitude modulation. You have ring mod, amp mod, and frequency modulation. And you have three different modes here. You have radio and oscillator. The oscillator adds this kind of tremolo effect, this movement to the sound. You even have a sidechain mode as well. So in the radio mode, you have your width and mix up at the top, and then you have the tuning and the carrier. This is going to be very important to getting the sound. So demo Freak, I thought it would be best to actually showcase it on a basic sine wave because it's doing some interesting things to sound. So we have a basic sine wave. Right, pretty boring, but let's apply a little bit of Freak. The harmonics knob's quite cool. Really adds, the higher you go, the more harmonics above your fundamental you're adding to the sound, which is pretty cool. And then the width, of course, spreads out the effect. So let's change it to radio. Same settings, or oscillator. Let's change it from radio to oscillator. Exact same settings. So I really like that. It's got a cool tremolo effect. And to slow it down, you just change the rate over here of the frequency. If you go really slow on the frequency or go really low, it creates this kind of digital, almost like reminds me of like a Sega Genesis, if you guys have ever played that. Right, and of course we can turn our mix up to add even more of the effect and change between the three different modes. So really interesting things would happen if you modulated between these different modes while you kind of move around the frequency in the oscillator. But that is the Freak effect. Now before we go, let's listen to these guys on an 808 because distortion and 808, they go together like milk and cookies. All right, so let's bypass dirt on this 808. Pretty cool 808, but with dirt, whew, it becomes filthy. So Dirt is a pretty cool effect or distortion saturation for 808s. So that sums up our first look, guys. If you have any questions or comments, post them. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you like this video and want to see more like it, please hit that like and subscribe button. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm Echo Soundworks. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you next time.